So how do you build a brain for a self-driving car that you can actually prove is safe? I'm not talking about probably safe or it feels safe. I mean mathematically provably safe. It's one of the absolute biggest challenges in engineering today, and the answer, it turns out, isn't just about writing smarter code. It's about the fundamental blueprint, the architecture itself.
So in this explainer, we're going to use the Safe Automated Driving report from the Autonomous Initiative as our guide. We'll start by really getting our heads around the massive scale of the safety problem. Then, we'll dive into the three big competing ideas for how to design an AV's brain. And finally, we'll see which approach the industry is really betting on to build our trust.
Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about solutions, we have to appreciate the just mind-boggling scale of the safety problem we're trying to solve here. This right here. This is the question that drives everything. It's really not enough for a car to just be a good driver. It has to be demonstrably, provably better than a human in every situation you can think of. And a lot you can't. I mean, how do you even begin to prove something like that?
This quote really just lays it all out there. If your only plan is to prove safety by driving cars around, you're gonna have a bad time. We're talking about giant fleets of cars, driving 24/7 for centuries and still not having enough data. So the big takeaway here is that proving safety through mileage alone, it's a statistical impossibility. It just can't be done.
So because of that, engineers have to work towards a totally different kind of target. This number, 10 to the minus 8 per hour. What does that even mean? Well, the goal is less than one safety-critical failure for every 100 million hours of driving. You can't test your way to a number that good. You just can't. You have to design for it. And that brings us to system architecture.
Right, so if you can't just test for safety, you have to design for it from the ground up. And that leads us to architecture, where the industry has kind of settled on three main schools of thought for how to do this.
The best way to think about it is like this. You've got the monolithic approach. That's like relying on a single, brilliant, genius pilot. Then there's the symmetric approach. Think of a committee of identical clones who all vote on what to do next. And finally, you have the asymmetric approach, which is more like a team of specialists. You've got a skilled pilot, but they're backed up by a super cautious co-pilot.
All right, let's start with the monolith. The logic here is actually really simple and appealing. Just build one system and make it as incredibly smart as you possibly can. So this means one single, incredibly complex piece of software is doing everything. It's taking in all the camera and LiDAR data, it's building a model of the world, it's planning the car's path, and it's sending the commands to the steering wheel and the brakes. It's one brain, and it is in total control.
Now, the source report points to some early systems like Audi's ZFAS and, based on what's publicly known, Tesla's FSD, as examples of this philosophy. But this is also its biggest weakness, its Achilles heel. The complexity is so massive, it's basically a black box. Trying to verify that it's completely bug-free becomes this almost impossible task. And more importantly, it's a single point of failure. One little unforeseen flaw could be catastrophic because there is absolutely no safety net.
That inherent risk in the monolith, well, it leads us directly to the next two big philosophies. And they're both built on a simple principle, redundancy. The idea is you never, ever rely on just one system. But how you build in that redundancy, that's where things get really interesting. Okay, so this splits into two very different ways of thinking. The symmetric approach is all about safety through consensus. You get a bunch of identical clones to agree. But the asymmetric approach is about safety through oversight, using a diverse team of specialists to create checks and balances. So the symmetric approach, also called majority voting, is super common in aerospace. But here's the problem. Driving is not like flying. On a chaotic street, there can be multiple correct ways to avoid something. So what if one system says swerve left, another says swerve right, and a third one has a tiny glitch? Well, you don't have a majority. The whole system just freezes. It's deadlocked. And this is where the power of the asymmetric model really shines. Here you have a doer. This is the complex, feature-packed system that does all the main driving. But you also have a completely separate and much simpler checker. And the checker's only job is to watch what the doer plans to do and just say yes or no if it violates a simple set of safety rules, like don't leave the road or don't hit things. It's like having a brilliant pilot who's being constantly watched by a cautious co-pilot who has the final say on safety.
Okay, so of these three philosophies, which one does the report actually point to as the real blueprint for trust? Well, it makes a very, very clear case for the asymmetric advantage. The report's conclusion is pretty unambiguous.
It's the inherent diversity in the system that makes the asymmetric approach so much more robust. Because the doer and the checker systems are designed differently, they are very unlikely to have the exact same bugs or the same blind spots. And that creates a much, much stronger safety net.
And hey, this isn't just some theory in a white paper. Look at this. This is a conceptual architecture from BMW, and you can see it right there in practice. You can clearly see the main channel, that's the doer, and the safe channel, that's the checker. This is a major automaker designing this exact philosophy into their next-gen cars.
So the advantages are really clear. That diversity makes the whole system tougher against bugs and cyber attacks. And here's the crucial part. Because the checker is so much simpler, its safety can be mathematically proven. You're no longer trying to verify this impossibly complex monolith. You're just verifying a clear, simple set of safety rules. And that, right there, is the paradigm shift.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. At the end of the day, this big technical decision about system architecture, it's really a decision about how we're going to build a system that's robust, that's verifiable, and ultimately, that's actually worthy of our trust. This scorecard really just delivers the final verdict. You can see the monolith fails on availability and CSIF, and CSIF stands for Safety of the Intended Functionality, which is just a fancy way of saying how does it handle weird, unexpected edge cases. Majority voting also really struggles with SOTIF. It's only the asymmetric approach that gives you high availability and strong support for those unknown scenarios, all while using simpler, more verifiable parts.
But the report leaves us with one last, kinda sobering thought. The asymmetric architecture is the best way forward, for sure, but these systems will still have millions and millions of lines of code. The highest automotive safety rating we have, ASIL-D, was never designed for software this complex. So the ultimate question still hangs in the air. Is even the highest standard we have today good enough for our fully autonomous future? And that's the challenge that engineers are racing to solve right now.